world of deceit. Telling the truth is a revolutionary act. It's the David Knight Show.
As the clock strikes 13, it's Monday, the 18th of May, year of our Lord 2026. I want to thank Guard for doing such a fantastic job as he always does on Friday, and we're back. Everything is fine, but there's been a lot of stuff that is happening. We have Trump who goes to China and then comes back and throws Taiwan under the bus. We're going to take a look at that. And he has, of course, paused the immoral, illegal Iranian war. He's going to restart it next week. I think it's probably because of the Massey election. He doesn't want to lay down too hard on his warmongering right now, as he's got this Navy SEAL he's trying to push in, who looks more and more like a hired killer, a mercenary for Israel. And of course, he wants to draft everybody else. We're going to take a look at what that looks like in Ukraine when you've got an unpopular war. And of course, there is massive open corruption from the Trump crime family that has come to light over the last week. We're going to take a look at that, as well as the Associated Press decided they would celebrate the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence and the Revolutionary War by calling for bans on muskets. And of course, all of Trump's opponents are traitors. Well, the Trump administration admits attacking Iran for Israel, and it wants 500,000 Chinese students at U.S. universities. Now, this is coming from the New American, and they're absolutely right. And I look at this, and I look at some of the comments of people who say, well, you know, I just support, I think that Thomas Massey has opposed Trump too much. Well, Trump has opposed Trump. President Trump is in direct opposition to everything that candidate Trump said he was going to do. As I played for you last week, and of course we got the shows out of order. It was supposed to be on Wednesday, but we had it on Thursday. And that was the fact that Trump said, well, I don't really care about Americans and their finances. I only care about one thing. What does Bibi want? He didn't say that last part there, but he says, yeah, we got to get that uranium stuff. We got to get the nuclear stuff. Well, that is what Bibi wants. Let's just make it clear. That's what he was saying. I don't care about you Americans. I only care about what Bibi wants. And then he comes out and says after that, when he comes back, he says, oh, well, you know, it's just kind of a PR stunt, getting that uranium. We don't really need it. So there wasn't an imminent threat then, you're saying. And of course, we have seen this over and over again as both he and War Pete speak about the war. They talk about how devastating their attacks last summer were. Oh, we just obliterate everything they have. But then we've got an imminent attack. And now Trump doubles down on the fact that it was not an imminent threat, I should say. It was not an imminent threat. Yeah, we're watching it. We've got a lot of eyes on it, and cameras and satellite cameras and things like that. But nobody's going near that site. So there was no imminent threat. There was absolutely no justification for the Iran war, and we've seen it over and over again. How many times does Trump have to lie to you before you understand where the guy is coming from? Trump confessed the truth to Israel First Fox talker Sean Hannity. Yeah, it truly is amazing when you look at how Trump has created a Zionist-occupied government.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been saying this for more than 30 years, claiming Iran is close to having
nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapons. Atomic bombs.
In 1992, as a member of parliament, Netanyahu addresses the Knesset. He says, within 3 to 5 years, we can assume that Iran will become autonomous in its ability to develop and produce a nuclear bomb. 3 years later, in his book Fighting Terrorism, he repeats the same time frame, 3 to 5 years.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Fast forward to 2002. Netanyahu testifies before a U.S. congressional committee actively calling for the invasion of Iraq.
Are there any other nations that you would recommend that the United States launch preemptive attacks upon at this point?
Oh, he's got a long list now.
The nations that are vying, competing with
Trump
each other,
does.
who will be the first to achieve nuclear weapons, is Iraq and Iran.
He pushed us into that war, too.
Happens months later. No weapons of mass destruction are found in Iraq.
That needs to be done with the Trump
Fragment of a
statute.
2009 U.S. State Department cable released by WikiLeaks. Netanyahu tells members of Congress that Iran is 1 or 2 years away from being capable of developing nuclear weapons.
They're online.
It's 2012, and Netanyahu is holding up his infamous cartoon bomb at the UN General Assembly.
By next spring, at most by next summer, at current enrichment rates, they will have finished the medium enrichment and move on to the final stage. From there, it's only a few months, possibly a few weeks, before they get enough enriched uranium for the first bomb.
Absolutely absurd.
And now, 33 years after Netanyahu's first so-called imminent warning, Israel attacks Iran.
If not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year, it could be within a few months, less than a year.
That's despite the U.S. Director of National Intelligence saying Iran isn't building a nuclear weapon months earlier.
Iran lied.
But for Netanyahu,
Big time.
the slogan has been the same for
Big time.
decades.
Big time liar.
The only thing that matters when I'm talking about Iran, they can't have a nuclear weapon. I don't think about Americans' financial situation. I don't think about anybody. I think about one thing. We cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon. That's all. I don't
What
think
does
about
Bibi want?
Americans' financial situation. I don't think about Americans' financial situation. I don't think about
We're last on the list. It is all for Israel. You know, when I was looking at that statue coming down, it actually has the same pose as Trump. And people put that up as a meme. You know, here's Saddam Hussein on one side. Here's Trump on the other side. This dictator with one arm up in the air. Only thing is, even Saddam Hussein didn't make a golden statue of himself. Earlier reports showed that Israel pushed the U.S. into the war, not only by presenting a fake claim that the U.S. officials, CIA, called farcical. This is a farce that's been running for over 30 years. And detached from reality was the other way they characterized it. But of course, Trump is a farcical detachment from reality himself. This guy has put out so many AI memes, he's become one. He doesn't know what he is doing. As a matter of fact, also by warning Trump that it would use nuclear weapons against Iran if the U.S. did not attack. And it's not the first time that Israel has blackmailed the U.S. government over threatening to unleash a nuclear attack on another country. Jonathan Pollard boasted about that. Yeah, when the U.S. didn't want to support us, we threatened to use nuclear weapons against Egypt. That's how we got their support. He boasted about that. Of course, he doesn't say nuclear weapons. It's a really big weapon of mass destruction. And of course, it was lies about weapons of mass destruction from Netanyahu that helped to push us into the Iraq war as well. But we'd already seen this. Marco Rubio had said, Israel was going to attack, so we had to do it first because Iran was then going to attack our bases, so we had to help them to try to minimize that responsive attack. And then Trump immediately came back and said, no, that didn't happen. He says, as a matter of fact, I might have forced their hand, he said, if you remember that. They were going to attack if we didn't do it, he said. They were going to attack first. I felt strongly about that. I think they were going to attack first, and I didn't want that to happen. So if anything, I might have forced Israel's hand. Even in that statement of what he says, well, they're going to attack and they're trying to force it. I forced their hand. No, you didn't. You responded to their threat. Nothing that he says makes any sense at all. As a matter of fact, he also told Hannity that he thought it was very important that 500,000 Chinese students should be brought into American universities because we have to protect the universities, right? They need money. I mean, we have this crisis of college education where it became uneconomical to go to college. Happened because the U.S. government started subsidizing tuition in massive amounts. It caused the tuition amounts to explode. But now, if you want to go to one of these things, and it's too bad, if you want to go to college, you need an education. Let's just put it that way. A real education in the real world. But it's always America last, isn't it? And so They need to have the institutions, universities need to be taken care of. The federal government wants to subsidize them. The federal government wants to subsidize Chinese students coming here. Isn't China the big bad bully that we got to fight? Isn't that what is happening? As a matter of fact, when you look at what the Iranians have done, they put out a video mocking Trump. And it's kind of a Western theme, like a good, bad, and the ugly theme. These guys are really good at mocking Trump. Of course, it is a very easy target, isn't it? The good, the bad, and the orange. There's a guy sitting in a bubble bath. Trump comes in gunning for him. Going to shoot him in the, he's walking down the Strait of Hormuz, it says right there. Breaks in, pointing the gun at the guy in the bathtub.
I will erase you from Earth like nobody's seen before. A whole civilization will die, never to be brought back again. Every bridge, every power plant.
He shoots him from underneath the soap suds. One more for good measure.
When you have to shoot, don't talk.
Yeah, Trump shoots his mouth off. That's the main thing that he shoots. He's a big talker, isn't he? The answer now makes sense given what Trump told Hannity, claiming that China, not the United States, needs the Strait of Hormuz open to oil traffic because he doesn't understand global markets. This guy, this businessman who bankrupted 6 casinos, has absolutely no understanding of global markets and global trade. That's why he has hamstrung us. As we played the report last week about the iPencil. He doesn't understand that even our domestic manufacturers need supplies that come from other countries. And he's not playing 4D chess. He's not even playing a good game of checkers. This guy is hurting our own manufacturers, and he doesn't even realize it. And when he thinks that only the people who directly buy the stuff from the Strait of Hormuz are affected, he knows nothing at all even about the OPEC oil embargo. That was only directed at the United States, and it was a smaller amount of oil for the United States than the amount of oil that the Trump embargo has created for the entire world. That's 20% for the entire world. But of course, it created a global shock even when they disrupted 15% of only American oil supplies because it's a global market. And so Sean Hannity says, well, these the universities, it also helps China. Again, aren't we paying tariffs, higher tax rates on all these goods coming in here because we want to hurt China? And look at how that has backfired. China's exports went up by 30% after the tariffs. It's kind of like what Biden did to Russia with the sanctions. Didn't hurt them at all. As a matter of fact, it helped them. They were making more money and they were getting paid in gold instead of U.S. dollars after Biden's sanctions. Former U.S. counterterrorism chief Joe Kent said, "You're paying ridiculous prices for gas. Inflation is rising, and we are evaporating our weapon stockpiles." And he finally admitted why. And actually, that was Marjorie Taylor Greene who said that. She said, "Everybody needs to wake up." Yeah, you do. Trump also told Hannity that he isn't much worried about China's purchase of farmland in the United States, notably near military bases. Not a problem, right? He gave Hannity a bizarre excuse for permitting 600,000 Chinese students to enter the United States. He says, well, we got to bring them here because if we don't, they might build their own university system. And, they might start selling DEI to people and critical race theory and other kinds of Marxist things that, even the Marxists in China don't get into that nonsense. It's so obvious that this is designed to destroy our society. But of course, we got to support the American universities no matter what. He said, American universities will die. Good riddance, I say. If those students aren't permitted to matriculate. Of course, he didn't use the term matriculate. You know what that means. I don't think that Trump does. How American universities survive before the influx of the Chinese and other troublemaking foreign students isn't clear. says the New American. If you want to see a university system die, said Trump, take 500,000 people out of it. Well, I do want to see it die. It is a cesspool of propaganda and manipulation, and it has long ago stopped being an economical alternative. It's nothing but propaganda. It's not knowledge. So I do want to see it die. Greene blasted Trump. Marjorie Taylor Greene said, Trump says it's insulting to tell China that their students can't go to our universities. Imagine being an American student and receiving a rejection letter while 500,000 Chinese students get in. And no, it is not okay for China to buy our farmland, she says. As a matter of fact, Lance and I were talking about this. There's an Asian guy who is suing, was it a company or a university for not letting him in?
It was a university.
Yeah, he couldn't get into the university because...
Well, he was a professor at the university, and he was suing because his Indian boss or coworker blocked his promotion, and the method in which he used to block his promotion was by falsely putting on his HR report that he was white. So
yeah, if you want to make sure somebody doesn't get a promotion, put them down as white, even if they're Chinese.
He's suing him for torpedoing his career because he put him down as white.
Yeah, yeah. And all of that stuff, folks, started in the universities. And we know who started that stuff in the universities. It's just disgusting, the racism that's there.
If I'd known you were getting into this story, I have a picture here of Xi Jinping when he was 32 at San Francisco. And someone's comment was, this must be where he picked up communism. This is a old problem here.
That's right. Yeah, we have a more virulent strain of communism here in the U.S. It's called critical race theory, and it's the LGBT gender weaponized stuff. Well, Trump says he wants the uranium, but he mostly wants it for public relation purposes. That's right.
It's a big project. To get it, it's a big project.
Do you feel there's been people that have, and generals that I've spoken to, that think you have to get the dust, which is the enriched uranium, or have you been told there may be a way to entomb it that they could never get to it?
So we were thinking about doing it early on, and it would take a while. It would take a week and a half. That's a long time to be in enemy territory. No, you got to move these massive amounts of granite. You know, it's a granite. Granite's the hardest stone. It's amazing that it's those were really powerful bombs that we used. And don't forget, we hit it on top of that. We hit Tomahawks on top of that. No, I don't think it's...
So there was no imminent threat?
From a public relations standpoint. I think it's important.
Yeah. But I think it is more for public relations than it is for anything else, he said. That's right. Just a lie. It's just propaganda. Like everything this SOB does. It's just amazing. So it's been a point of emphasis, however, for Israel for 30 plus years. So Trump doesn't care about Americans' finances. He doesn't care about the truth. There is no imminent threat. He boasts on the one hand that they had obliterated it, and then goes back a couple of months later and says, well, I got to stop it because they're going to have a nuclear bomb any moment now. Now he says it is so virtually entombed and they're watching it and nobody's gone near it for months. And yet he's got to do it for PR purposes. Going to murder people for PR. Going to push a war for PR. And I honestly think that he is waiting until after this Massey election to go back into this stuff. Because he doesn't want to underscore the fact of what a traitor he has been to his own people. Anyone who would vote for this puppet, this Israeli puppet that he's put up there, and say they're voting to support Trump. Yeah, it's a fight between Trump and Massey. No, it is a fight between Trump, the Constitution, and Trump versus morality and the rule of law. And so, as we also had over the weekend, we had a weekend of a call to prayer and fasting, which I don't have a problem with. It's just the way the government defines their religion. As I said before, once you take down that wall that holds government back from religion and they start pushing religion and they start using it to baptize their murderous wars that cannot be justified, what you wind up with is nothing but politics. And that's really what we're seeing here. But at the center of this weekend that this last weekend that we had, at the center of that was a call for a national Shabbat. Again, the Jewish religion that has taken over our country, taken over the Trump administration. This is what it looked like in the White House. Yeah. Have a tequila. There you go. Right there. Well, we've been told that
it's an honor to be here with the first Jewish president of the United States.
Yeah, that's what they brag about. Well, the war on Iran, thanks to our first Jewish president, may become a turning point in the post-Cold War order, says RT. And again, the one thing we can thank Trump for is the unintended consequences of his over-the-top criminal actions, just like his COVID warp speed thing woke people up about vaccines. He's now waking everybody up about what a fraud the American empire is. Folks, it is a paper tiger, and the paper is fiat currency. If it wasn't for the big military budget, which is based on destroying the foundations of America with debt, we would not be the threat that a lot of people perceived us to be. But now people are seeing that threat was just a paper tiger, a fiat currency tiger. So the Strait of Hormuz crisis has changed the calculations of every major power, says RT. Failure to achieve their objectives has already changed the strategic calculations of every major power. For decades, the instability of the Middle East was viewed as manageable. Conflicts were bloody, but they didn't threaten the foundations of the international system itself. Even at the height of the Cold War, the region was seen by the great powers as an arena for competition rather than a place where they would risk everything. But now this has changed for two reasons. First, the Middle East never directly touched the vital survival interests of major powers, but now it does because of the financial issues. Middle Eastern conflicts resembled a permanent wound in the international politics. Painful, dangerous, but ultimately containable. Now, however, the situation has changed. I would say that wound is starting to get gangrenous, right? Economically. And it all boils down to the fact that Trump doesn't do geopolitics. He does egopolitics. He doesn't do economics. He does egonomics. The most immediate consequences of this have been economic. They've demonstrated their capacity, the Iranians have, to undermine the foundations of global economic interdependence. The political consequence may prove even more significant. For decades, the U.S. was viewed as a power that was capable of imposing its will militarily almost anywhere in the world, even after failures in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Vietnam. But now this is a blow that they may not recover from. And I say they because I have absolutely no interest in being connected to the American empire whatsoever. Just like Rome, which was a republic before it became an empire, the same thing has happened here in America. And the American empire needs to die. Washington needs to go away, have its power ripped out from it. So it's going to have economic consequences. Why? Because it is a paper tiger. They've created this with massive debt. But the longer that this paper tiger roars and puts us further into debt, the greater the calamity will be when it finally inevitably dies. Despite devastating strikes against senior officials and constant aerial attacks the Iranian state has endured, no mass uprising materialized, armed forces continue to function, and the country's governing structures proved to be more resilient than Washington had anticipated. And I think it'll prove to be more resilient than Washington itself. This doesn't mean that Iran has emerged victorious, but it does mean that the old assumption of automatic American military supremacy no longer looks convincing. And again, we can go back to the what Goethe said. You're either hammer or anvil. In this particular case, the Pentagon is the hammer, but Iran is the anvil, and they are taking a beating, but they still look the same, basically. You can beat on that anvil as much as you want, but it's not going to break up. The attackers underestimated the cohesion of the state they were confronting. For the U.S., this was a war of choice rather than necessity, unless you see pleasing your Zionist masters as a necessity, which Trump and the Republican Party see it that way, and many Democrats as well. Iran posed no existential threat to American survival, but it does now. It does now to the survival of American hegemony. And if they keep going, Iran and other countries are going to develop nuclear weapons. They've got more of an incentive to do that now than ever before. And they will use those nuclear weapons to defend themselves. And many other asymmetric measures are available to them as well. You know, the problem of the national security state has always been the intelligence community, the lack of intelligence, the stupidity of the CIA, along with the immorality of these assassinations, these coups, and everything else. That's what started all of this Iranian stuff. It was the stupidity of U.S. intelligence and the immorality of U.S. intelligence community overthrowing the democracy in Iran and installing a brutal totalitarian king. That's what Shah means in Persian. And they're doing it here to us at home as well. The U.S. political class has spent decades operating from a position of extraordinary global dominance. This has narrowed in worldview as American elites increasingly interpret international politics primarily through the prism of domestic political assumptions and ideological preferences, which is why I think when you look at the calculations of doing a pause, again, part of it is to say, hey, the war's over. You know, the War Powers Act doesn't apply to us. The Constitution doesn't apply to us either. And since we're putting it on a pause, you know, it's not an issue with the Massey election, perhaps. We'll pick it up next week, and they're talking about how that's absolutely planned. At the same time, Washington has accumulated an enormous network of commitment across the globe. Maintaining them often creates pressure for exactly the sort of risky intervention that produced the current crisis. You see, our military industrial complex on steroids, which, again, we are more than most of the countries in the world spend on defense, they're not going to be happy until we spend more on defense with our paper tiger money than the rest of the world combined. And they're getting pretty close to that. And so as they do that, that undermines our country. And it also entraps us, as Pat Buchanan said. You know, we, with all these treaties and mutual defense agreements we've got traps set up all around the world to draw us into each and every conflict. And by the way, that's the point. That's what the military-industrial complex wants. They want us to be drawn in these conflicts. That's how they make money. They sell the weapons. They sell the replacement weapons when all this stuff happens. You humans are disposable. And, it's the money that they make from selling the weapons that's important. You are expendable. China, meanwhile, tried to maintain stable and pragmatic relations with the current American administration, but the attack on Iran, widely viewed from outside of the West as a blatant violation of international law. It is, just like Venezuela. And it is also a blatant violation of our domestic law and a blatant violation of our Constitution. And so it's getting harder for Beijing to treat relations with Washington as merely another economic negotiation. But even Saturday Night Live could see what Trump was doing when he came back from China. You know, they they open with their skit with J.D. Vance and their Trump impersonator. And the Trump impersonator says to Vance, oh, look at this. I just got this from Xi Jinping, or any way he pronounces his name was Xi or something. And it's a Chinese finger torture thing, you know, when you put your fingers in it and then try to pull it out. And the harder you pull, the tighter it gets. And he says, and I gave him Taiwan. And really, Trump did, it looks like. He comes back trashing Taiwan with false accusations about how they stole the semiconductor business. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But it looks like Trump has gone through a bit of recalibration in his own mind as well as he sees what happened in the Strait of Hormuz. What's he going to do in the Strait of Taiwan? For Russia, the consequences are more complex than many would assume, says RT. Moscow has benefited economically from higher commodity prices, but Russia is not necessarily interested in a complete collapse of American influence in the Middle East. The Iranian crisis matters so profoundly, not simply because it's another Middle Eastern war, but rather a moment that has forced all the major powers to confront the uncomfortable questions about military force, economic vulnerability, strategic overreach, and the changing structure of the international system itself. As I've said before, Trump is a one-man fourth turning, a guy to bring us into a financial great reset, as well as perhaps a global war. The last fourth turning we had, the Great Depression and World War II. Prior to that, we had the Civil War, which was a massive revolt, and prior to that, the Revolutionary War. So here he is, right on time, and he is creating a civil war here at home between the parties, between different groups of people, and even within his own political party. Meanwhile, he is trying to establish a global depression yet again. Make depression great again. So there have been profound changes domestically, as we will see. And of course, what you've got now is COG, continuity of government, as well as the ZOG, the Zionist-occupied government. One guy is out there bragging about the fact that he is a goy for Israel. The guy's name is Matthias Dufner, CEO of Axel Springer, which is a suspected front for the CIA. He declares himself to be a Zionist, and he does this at the World Jewish Congress. This is who he is talking to.
Why should Zionism be an idea and a goal that only Jews can embrace? I'm a goy.
We can all kill people for land.
Zionist. With all my heart, out of conviction, and with passion. First, we need a zero-tolerance policy towards open hatred of Jews. All anti-Semites, in word and deed, regardless of
criminalized speech,
must be expelled wherever legally possible.
This is Israel's gift to us.
British politician and Conservative Party leader Kemi Badenoch put it clearly and courageously, I quote, anything that's inciting violence against Jews has got to go, quote end. We need this statement and its consequences not only in Britain, but in every democratic country. Second, Europe should introduce preferential immigration and citizenship for Jewish families. In the US, approximately 7.7 million Jews live. That is 2.2% of the population. In the EU and the UK combined, it is roughly 1 million. That is 0.2% and 10 times less than in America. It is in Europe's...
Well, and again, he goes on for 6 minutes. Actually, it was that clip there was his entire speech reduced to 6 minutes. I'm not going to play 6 minutes of this guy groveling before the World Jewish Conference. I think it's sufficient for us to understand, as Levin said.
An honor to be here with the first Jewish president of the United States.
That's right, and it's Israel that is buying Congress.
Into whether Israel gets to buy seats in Congress. And what they found out is that my seat's really expensive. They've probably, when this is over, will have spent $20 million and come up short.
So why is Israel the only country that gets to buy elections in the United States? Or does any other country get to?
I've never seen Great Britain or Australia or even Germany play in our elections.
That's
here
what
in
I
the
said
United
last
States.
week.
But Israel gets so much from the United States. It's a one-sided relationship. They get us to be their proxies in wars that they want against their enemies. They get our military assistance, they get our technology, they get our bombs, they get our tax dollars. And I think it's a very one-sided relationship. At least with NATO, we pretend that they would come to our aid someday if we needed it, and even that's a ruse.
Yeah. So, just like this guy was saying, Matthias Döpfner says, I'm a goy and I'm a Zionist, and he ends his speech with, we shall all be Zionists. Well, no, we won't. As a matter of fact, we have seen the evil of prolonged civilian attacks, and we've seen their genocidal intentions, not only by their actions, but also by their words. And when we oppose that, as he said, you need to have your speech taken away from you. You need to be canceled. And so he demands to shut people up by censorship as they drag us into war. I think we've had enough of this. And remember, it was Donald Trump who prostituted himself to Israel. He says to them, well, it used to be that Congress was owned by Israel, and rightfully so, he said. Rightfully so, to be owned by a foreign government. As I said, imagine we had a situation, I said this last week, imagine we had a situation where Germany is getting billions of dollars a year from the United States government. And you have anybody who says, I think this foreign aid stuff, we just can't afford it. Look at the massive amount of debt we've got. We're going into $40 trillion worth of debt. And of course, Massey realizes what a problem that is. When you had a freshman congressman came in this last time, he handed them all a lapel counter that totaled up the national debt. Here, you might want to take a look at this before you spend more money with your votes. But let's say that you have somebody who, like Pat Buchanan, just said, let's stop all foreign aid. Well, then what if Germany, hypothetical situation, is getting billions of dollars of aid, and then Germany starts using that billions of dollars worth of aid to oppose congressmen who oppose giving them that money? Is there a conflict of interest in that? Is that corruption? Is that criminal? A criminal fraud against our country? Yes. And, quite frankly, that is exactly what is happening. But just understand that according to Mark Levin, if you are not on board with Zionism, you hate the Bible.
This is our country. We're celebrating
Zionist.
our country. Every July 4th, we're celebrating the principles that undergird our country. If you reject Judaism and you reject Christianity and you reject the link of the two, you reject the Bible. If you reject Judaism and Christianity and the brotherhood and the sisterhood of the two,
you rejected Christ. You reject the Bible.
Founding, you're rejecting our country. You're pushing some other agenda.
I do reject your country. I do reject Israel. And I reject the American federal government as well. But the bottom line is, when you look at it, it is, again, we've heard Gerald Slinty go off about the Ashkenazi, but there is a biblical reason to push back against this. J.D. Hall has a very interesting expose, and it is the Bible itself exposes the fact that the Ashkenazi are not Jewish, not by ethnicity. And when you look at the fact that they have created a racist ethnic state as an excuse for their land grab, that is a reality that is very important. They don't want people genetically tested, but it goes beyond that. And there have been several Israeli geneticists and people who are historians who have pointed out that these people called Ashkenazi, not because they're Jews that went to an area that was called Ashkenazi, but because they were Ashkenazi in another area, as the Bible points out, descendants not of Noah's three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And of course, the Semitic line came from Shem. The Indo-European line came from Japheth. And the Ashkenaz came from that line, not from the Semitic line, according to the Bible. And even when you look at the historian Josephus, who is perhaps the preeminent historian of antiquity, Jewish himself, he puts the Ashkenaz settlements in Turkey and other places like that. So it was not an area that was known as the Ashkenazi area, and the Jews did not become Ashkenazi Jews because they went to an area that was called Ashkenazi. No, the Ashkenazi settled in Turkey, and then they resettled in these areas of Germany and other places like that. That's where it really comes from. And so he points out there is a Israeli. Let me see if I can find this here, because I am summarizing everything else. It's quite long. If you look at J.D. Hall, his Insight to Incite, that's INSIGHT TOINCITE. And if you look at that, he's got a very long explanation of this. He said, what happened after the temple was destroyed in 70 AD, that's when Josephus was writing. He said, what you have is essentially you've lost all the genealogical records. He said, you've got would be tantamount to Washington, D.C., losing everybody's birth certificate and passport information all at once. So it's sketchy at best, but the Bible does provide an answer, and you also have a rabbi historian, Isidore Loeb, who in 1885 said Israeli historian Shlomo Sand also argued in his 2008 book, The Invention of the Jewish People, he said, the concept of a Jewish ethnic people descended from ancient Israelites is largely a modern political construct. These are not anti-Semitic agitators, says J.D. Hall. They are rabbis, university professors, parliamentarians, and prize-winning authors who are saying the same thing. And what they're saying is they've lost these records, number one. Number two, if you go back and you look at the case of the Ashkenazi Jews and peer-reviewed genetic science conducted by an Israeli researcher, corroborated by the Table of Nations in Genesis 10, and confirmed by first-century Jewish historiography, anticipated by Protestant biblical commentary written centuries before anyone was arguing about Zionism. As a matter of fact, you have Christian commentators like John Gill, John Calvin, Matthew Poole, Matthew Henry. Many of these people all said the same thing, just looking at the Bible. And they said the Ashkenazi are not Jewish descendants. And it is kind of interesting. This is all in Genesis 10, 2 chapters before the misrepresentation put out by Ted Cruz and Mike Huckabee and others, saying that God was going to bless the world through Israel. No, he said, I will bless those who bless you, Abraham. Singular, the Abraham. And through your seed, singular, all nations will be blessed. That is the Messiah, the promised Messiah. As Jesus said, Abraham saw my day and rejoiced because of that. That's what he saw in the promise. These are people, by the way, like Ben Shapiro, when he was asked about, did Moses part the Red Sea? He was asked that by Joe Rogan. I've played that many times. He says, well, no, that didn't happen. But he believes the part where he gets the land. And again, when you look at it, you need to understand that there is a world of difference between Judaism as delivered by Moses and the modern Judaism that has been delivered by rabbinical commentators. And that's what Ben Shapiro appeals to. Maimonides says, blah, 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 right? So they have rejected the word of God for the word of men. And so the bottom line that they don't want you to look at, and this is also something that is Jewish historians, Jewish university professors, as well as Christian Bible commentators for centuries have said this area is not a Jewish area. And so one guy, Eran Elhaik, this is the guy I was looking for, an Israeli-American geneticist born in Israel in 1980, completed his PhD in molecular evolution at the University of Houston in 2009, followed it with 2 postdoctoral fellowships at Johns Hopkins. He has been cited over 13,000 times in research papers. He is not a crank. He's not a white supremacist. He is an Israeli scientist with credentials of the establishment. And he decided he would investigate his own people's origin story. His findings are not too complicated to summarize. Using a method called geographic population structure analysis, He traced the genetic origins of the Ashkenazi Jews and localized the majority of them to a specific region, the ancient trade routes of northeastern Turkey. His conclusion was the primary source population for Ashkenazi Jews was not Semitic Israelites that were dispersed from Palestine, but rather Greco-Iranian converts to Judaism, living in Anatolia, with the conversions occurring in the early centuries after Christ. And again, he was attacked by the Jewish establishment, this guy who was an Israeli himself. So the bulk of Israelis would not have a land grant for Israel if such a thing even existed. It does not exist in the Bible. It is a false construct in the Bible based on false genetic constructs as well. So first, they have a foundational claim that is demonstrably false that Ted Cruz and Mike Huckabee put out there. Then on top of that, they have a false genetic claim. That is where we are with Zionism. It is simply a land grab. It is simply murder for land. It's what they're looking at. And so, again, when we look at the influence of Israel, we're told that Israel is the basis of Western civilization. That's what Mark Levin and others want us to believe.
Our declaration is based on Judeo-Christian belief systems. There's simply no question about this. In fact, I want to recommend to you...
Hey, you know what? If you don't believe in Christ, shut up about Judeo-Christian anything.
Christian Roots of American Liberty in this excellent book. And it's written by two great scholars, and it's put out by Encounter Books that put out smart books. And it talks about how the revolutionaries early on, the founders of our nation, they could quote from what they called the Hebrew Bible and, of course, what they called the Christian Bible. They could quote from the Bible, the Old Testament and the New Testament.
You know what? It's an Old Testament because Christ was given a superior priesthood. There is no priesthood left in Judaism. It went with the temple in 70 AD. There is another priesthood, which even at the time of the New Testament writers was a superior priesthood, the priesthood of Melchizedek. And of course, Brian Shulhavy has a long article on his site, The Non-Jewish High Priest Office of Jesus Christ in the New Covenant and the Priesthood of All Believers in Christ. And so the bottom line is, you know, when he says, I have sworn to hold you up and you are a high priest forever in the line of Melchizedek, and we look at what happens in terms of the Bible, this mysterious guy who comes from nowhere, the King of Peace, the King of Salem. And of course, Abraham paid tithes and offerings to him. And throughout the book of Hebrews, and that's the point of Brian Shulhavy's article, he says, Hebrews was written to, guess who? Hebrews. He's trying to point out to them that this is a better and a superior covenant that is a fulfillment of what was in the Old Covenant. That's why we call it the Old Testament and the New Testament. Testament is a covenant, essentially. And yet you have people like Mark Levin, and if you don't believe him, you can believe, if you don't believe Mark Levin, that Israel created America, that Israel basically is the basis of Western civilization, then listen to Mike Huckabee. He talks about all the wonderful inventions that we would never have if it weren't for Israel.
We lose a lot in terms of our own national security, our own military capacity.
Yeah, it makes us more secure, doesn't it?
A lot of Americans never think about. I hear people say, I don't want anything to do with Israel. I say, okay, give up your cell phone. Give up car navigation.
You don't want to go to war with Iran, give up your cell phone.
Innovations that may have saved some member of your family's life. Be sure, by the way, to give up some conveniences like cherry tomatoes and seedless watermelons while you're at it. And let's just go ahead and don't buy anything that has an NVIDIA or an Intel chip.
And of course, these guys are there nodding their heads, right? Yeah, that's right.
Oh, yes, well, NVIDIA and Intel, those famous Israeli companies.
Well, give up your cell phone. Well, you may want to give up your cell phone because the only invention that I can see the Israelis doing is using them as targeted bombs. But they did not invent the cell phone, as a matter of fact. None of the things that he mentioned there, cell phones, cherry tomatoes, seedless watermelon, none of that was invented by Israel. As a matter of fact, the cell phone was invented by an American, Martin Cooper, not Jewish, by the way, an engineer at Motorola. April 3rd, 1973, he made the first public call from a portable prototype New York City sidewalk. While early mobile communication concepts and car-mounted radio telephones existed prior to this, Cooper's invention was the first truly portable handheld device. He did it for Motorola, an American company. It was done by an American engineer, trained in America. It was not an Israeli gift, as a matter of fact. It was 50 years ago that he set us down this path. And what about cherry tomatoes? Well, Mike Huckabee is as wrong about cherry tomatoes and cell phones and seedless watermelon as he is about the Bible and about the idea that Israel makes us safer in terms of national security. Cherry tomatoes were not invented by a single person. They were originated from wild tomatoes native to South America, Peru, Ecuador, Chile. First domesticated in Mexico, about 700 AD. So it was Mexicans and South Americans who gave us cherry tomatoes. And it is to say that you modified something, perhaps they did do some genetic modification, but to say that because you modified something, you created it, is the greatest stretch that you can have. What do you want to say, Lance?
Well, I mean, if you don't want to go to war for them, then you should stop eating this thing that was developed in Mexico hundreds of years ago.
That's right. I would give up my cherry tomatoes and my cell phone if we could have peace, rather than dragging us into yet another war.
Maybe they invented spying on the cell phones.
Yeah, there you go. Well, and of course, then there's terms of spying. Let's talk about GPS. GPS was not invented by a single individual, but was designed through the collaborative efforts of the U.S. Department of Defense and several key engineers. You got people like Ivan Getting, who is not an Israeli. He proposed the foundational concept of a satellite-based positioning system, and he was the founding president of the Aerospace Corporation. Then you got Roger Easton, not an Israeli. He developed the timation system, which introduced critical technologies like precise satellite clocks and time-based navigation. Bradford Parkinson, not an Israeli, known as the father of GPS, he integrated various technologies into the Navstar system, and he led that program for the Department of Defense from 1972 to 1978. And then you have Dr. Gladys West, a black woman who, by the way, is not an Ashkenazi Jew. Huckabee needs to look this stuff up. These are all Americans working for the Defense Department. So again, Roger Easton is listed as the sole inventor on the original GPS patent, but is widely recognized as a joint achievement of many different pioneers. Then we go to seedless watermelon. Where did that come from? Well, that was invented 50 years ago in Japan. Professor H. Kahara, who published an article on triploid watermelons. In other words, that is a genetic term talking about how they propagate them without seeds. So again, when we look at this, Huckabee has become an amazing instrument of disinformation, confusion, and outright lies in terms of everything that he says. But we should understand, as Christians, the superior order of Christ's priesthood, how the Old Testament was replaced by a superior New Testament, that the New Testament was concealed in the Old Testament, revealed in the New Testament, and it is a fulfillment. People want to talk about a replacement. It is a fulfillment of what was always planned. The Lord has sworn and will not change his mind. You are a priest forever. Now, this is coming from Psalms, and of course, this is what David was talking about when he said, the Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand. And Jesus pointed out, he said, so who is he calling his Lord? and who is being set at the right hand of God. This is going back to the Hebrew scriptures that are there, which are basically talking about Christ. As Jesus said to the scribes, he said, you search the scriptures, the Old Testament, thinking that in them you have eternal life, but they testify of me. And this is why I say we can look at all the geological proofs, we can look at the archaeological proofs, we can look at the astronomical proofs of God, we can look at DNA and things like that, microbiology. But I think one of the best proofs you'll ever find is the Bible itself. That is the real value of the Old Testament, that it testifies of Christ. And that we should not lose track of. And we should understand that if you want to talk Judeo-Christian, it ends with the New Testament, which they reject. So don't let them pull that nonsense on you. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be right back. Stay with us.
The seed in our homeland, boys, let it grow where all can see. Feed it with our devotion, boys, call it the Liberty Tree. It's a tall old tree and a strong old tree. And we are the sons, yes, we are the sons of liberty.
It's your move. You're listening to The David Knight Show.
Tell Alexa to add the APS radio skill and have access to the best channels anywhere, from country to blues, classic hits to news. APS Radio curates incredibly diverse playlists for you to enjoy. Get details at apsradio.com.
Welcome back, and we got a lot of comments here. Let me read some of these. DG8 says, David, the Massey primary is a turning point in U.S. history. Can foreign lobbyists, the Epstein class, and the D.C. swamp run out Massey, who has a 99% constitutional voting record? If they can, it is dangerous times. Well, I think you're absolutely right. You know, we look at what is the proper way to oppose Trump. In one word, Massey. We don't have to turn to the Democrats right now at this point, because the Democrats are going to do a lot of the same horrible things that Trump does, and they've got their own additional horrible things that they will do, because Trump is basically a Democrat. He is a New York City Democrat, and he takes the traditional positions that Democrats have always taken. The idea that we're going to tax our way to prosperity, constantly pushing us into wars that he promised never to get us involved in, just like Woodrow Wilson and FDR and others like that. So this is the point. You can stand with conservative principles and stand against President Trump. And if you're doing that, you're standing with candidate Trump, because candidate Trump lied to us and told us he was a Republican and he was for peace and prosperity, and he is not. And he has set himself against the Constitution. If allowed to continue, he will destroy the Constitution with the precedents that he is setting. Audi, MRR, thank you very much. That's very generous. Thank you. He said, thank you, David and Travis, for all you do. Honest reporting and analysis. Thank you so much. And again, you can find Audi at modernretroradio.com. And you can also find his podcast, It's All a Lie. And he is absolutely right about that. Everything they say. I'm Marty. Good to see you, Marty. Thank you for your support as well. He says, Massey's opponent, Gal Ryan, has gotten $12 million from AIPAC. Yeah, they are pumping the money in real fast at the last minute. And it smells of desperation, quite frankly, along with these phony charges that they brought against Massey. And we're going to get into that right now because the election is tomorrow. Sub-Zero Design says, people hear Trump talk about his uncle, but what they don't hear from Trump is that his uncle was an FBI physicist that covered up and buried Tesla's free energy research. Yeah, I've heard that as well. This is from Lance. Is that the next one? Is that from you?
Yeah, I was just saying,
Yeah.
I love how the implication from that last story is that we still owe Israel for the seedless watermelons enough to go to war for them. You'd think with all the billions of dollars we've sent them, that would have paid for the watermelons by now.
Yeah, you give the watermelons to your slaves, but the thing is, at least the slaves got a pork barrel project. They'd set up a pork barrel and they could stick a fork in it, whatever they could get, at that point in time. We don't even get that from our Zionist masters, not at all. Steve Evans says, where does the U.S. have any right to tell any other country what they can and can't have for defense? You're absolutely right. We don't have that right. Israel's got a right to exist, but not Iran. That's the key we have to understand here. Audi, MRR, Modern Retro Radio, says the only reason that mainstream media is covering the blowback from the Iran conflict is because they know we know. They always act like credible journalists after the fact. You're absolutely right. Nibiru 2029 says Caligula Trump taking the knee to China as instituted by Nixon, Kissinger, and Bush back in the 1970s. It's another indication, folks, that Trump is a globalist. In spite of everything that he says, I'm not a globalist. He works for the World Economic Forum. He goes to Davos and unleashes his Board of Peace, International Board, and a massive financial grift. I mean, this guy has moved on from the $250 million he ripped off the MAGA supporters before January the 6th. He's moved on now to ripping off the U.S. taxpayers billions of dollars for his Board of Peace that establishes him as dictator for life, or as long as he wants to be dictator. Baru 2029 says banks will begin to offer zero interest rates to those who purchase, who basically get suckered, and to Chinese EVs subsidized by Mark's American taxpayers and Trump executive orders. Yeah. You could even argue that maybe that is his long-term plan in terms of disrupting energy markets. Because you've already got people with a lot of money, and they don't really care how expensive EVs are. They're buying the high-end EVs. They got Cadillac EVs are starting to sell like they haven't before. Because the uber rich say, well, I don't want to sit in a gas line. I don't want to see this thing ration. So let me just go buy a Cadillac EV. Many of us don't have that option financially. And so now what Trump has done is he's brought range anxiety to internal combustion engines, which we never had before. Thank you, globalist Trump. Audi MRR says SNL is critical of Trump only because the stage is being set for the next Obama DNC savior. Not falling for that scam again. Yeah, you're right. And, of course, I think that is also part of Trump's mission. Trump is destroying the Republican Party and it's their own fault, because they follow this guy slavishly, devoted to him, doing anything that he says. You see this with Mike Johnson on down. The only exception to that is Thomas Massie. The rest of them have thoroughly discredited and embarrassed themselves. And they're going to find that Trump is an albatross around the GOP, may destroy it. In the same way that Jimmy Carter was an albatross around the neck of the Democrat Party for generations. And I think you're going to see that with Trump and the Republicans as well. They deserve to be discredited if they're going to tie themselves to this guy. So Bogus says, no matter who you vote for, you get BB. That's right, except for Massie. Patty Wack says, if the Jews didn't make it, the African Americans did. Or that's what every influencer posts. That's right. Well, let's take a look at the elections, because we had one last week, and we got another one tomorrow. We have the Massie election tomorrow. Last week, we had the Louisiana Senator Bill Cassidy, lost to and Trump-endorsed challengers. And so Trump is taking a victory lap with that. But I got to say, Cassidy had a lot of issues. He was Mr. Vaccine. This guy was a pharmaceutical whore, if ever there was one. And you could see it in terms of the way he would attack people that were being brought up before his Senate committee for HHS, whether it was RFK Jr. or other people. You could see what a sold-out prostitute for vaccines Cassidy was. There's when I look at him, I see there's a state senator in California, he's probably still there, Senator Pan, and he's a physician as well. And he would do anything and everything for the vaccine industry. and they owned Pan, lock, stock, and barrel, just like they owned Cassidy. And yet the beef that Trump had with Cassidy was that Cassidy had voted to impeach Trump. And so it's vengeance time here. And Cassidy was also holding up Trump's nomination of Surgeon General. We don't even need a Surgeon General. It's not a constitutional office, and this is something we don't even need, so why even bother to fight about it? But as Patriot TV said, Bill Cassidy was never going to survive his own record. He was wrong on so many different issues. As he points out, they'll only talk about his vote against Trump, his vote to impeach Trump. Actually, not. It's the House that impeaches. The Senate votes as to whether or not they will convict of the impeachment. So you can think of impeachment as an indictment. That comes from the House. Then there's a trial in the Senate, and that's like the jury voting. And there were 7 Republicans who joined every Democrat to impeach Trump, but it wasn't, unfortunately, enough. Richard Burr of North Carolina retired afterwards. So did Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania. He retired. Ben Sasse resigned to become the head of Florida University of Florida in Gainesville. Mitt Romney walked away rather than go for re-election. And so Cassidy is number 5 of the 7 Republicans who voted to impeach Trump. I got to say about Ben Sasse, he has shown through adversity, through his cancer diagnosis, he's talked quite a bit about his Christian faith. This guy, I think, is truly authentic. And I think he was right to impeach Trump. I would have voted to impeach him myself. It leaves Collins and Lisa Murkowski. And so they're the 2 that are left. And we'll see if Trump is able to get them as well. But it was never just about that. As a matter of fact, a bipartisan Safer Communities Act was something that he voted for. He joined every Democrat to pass that. It is a significant federal gun control legislation, the most significant in 3 decades. Bill Cassidy voted for that. Now, Trump doesn't mention that because in that significant gun control legislation, it contained a lot of things that Trump declared he could do without their help. I can do it just by executive order. It's bad enough that this guy did it with a law because, again, Congress can't make any law to overrule the Second Amendment. They would have to change the Constitution. So their law is an unconstitutional infringement of your Second Amendment rights. But what Trump did by saying, well, I can do this from the executive branch, he makes it even easier to invalidate not invalidate, that's not the right word, to usurp the Second Amendment. So what do they have in this bipartisan Safer Communities Act? They had red flag programs, extended background checks. It's the stuff that Trump said, fortunately, I can do that myself. No, you can't. And of course, Congress has no authority to do that either. But he did it. And so he said it was going to be a mental health thing. And as a physician, I have to support mental health. So we're going to red flag people saying they shouldn't have guns. But Louisiana gun owners saw through that. And then there was his move against Social Security, a benefit cut that would land hardest on low-wage workers. So yeah, they realize they've got a deficit problem. So let's break faith with the people that we promised to give them a little bit of money at the end of their life. The guy was a big pharma prostitute, and good riddance to the guy. But anyway, Trump is very excited about the fact that he got him out, and he got him out simply because it was personal for him. Well, we have Trump coming after Massey, of course, and here is Thomas Massey's opponent talking about how Trump is playing 3D chess. I'm sorry, not 3D. That's so old school. That's Alex Jones is talking about 3D chess, and Alex Jones jumped it up to 4D chess. Then Alex Jones jumped it up to 5D chess. And here is Ed Galrain, because he knows that the people who are supporting him are slow learners who can't think critically.
During his speech, Gowrie noted how the Kentucky business community and farmers are being squeezed by the rising cost of fuel and fertilizer.
Because of Trump.
Me to ask how he feels about the war in Iran, which has caused prices to soar.
The president is playing five-dimensional chess. He is resetting the entire global power structure. So let him work through that, to reset that, to set the conditions for just like President Reagan did.
Oh, yeah, he's just like Reagan, isn't he? Yeah, there we go. He's playing 5D chess. Well, I would like to ask Ed. Ed, can you explain to me what the fifth dimension is? I know what three dimensions are. You can add time as a fourth dimension. I'm really not sure what the fifth dimension is. Are you into string theory or something like that?
I'm just going to keep on adding more dimensions.
Yeah, he is, in fact, stringing people along. So I asked that. I said, so what is the fifth dimension? And it's not a group, by the way. It was a group. But when we look at the chess that Trump is playing, I guess we could think of the fifth dimension song Up, Up, and Away, because that's what's going to happen to prices. It's a balloon song.
The sixth dimension is realizing that all of it is nonsense.
That's good. I like that. So, yeah. And then he finishes up with trust the plan, right? As I've said for the longest time, trust is the plan. It's what the Bolsheviks called their plan. To find all of their opposition abroad, they created an organization that they called the Trust. And they were actually able even to rope in the guy that Ian Fleming patterned James Bond after, Sigmund Riley, who was the premier spy for the British. He got roped in by the Trust, put together by Felix Dzerzhinsky of the Cheka, the predecessor to the KGB. But folks, trust is the plan. And it is pure Bolshevik. It's pure BS today as well. So Trump goes on this rant against Thomas Massie. Here's what he had to say. He said, Thomas Massie of Kentucky, the worst, most unreliable Republican congressman in the history of our country. No, he's very reliable. If you want to know what Thomas Massie is going to do, just read the Constitution. And you'll know what he's going to do before he does it, because he follows the Constitution, unlike the liar and thief Donald Trump. And so he's pointing out about how, I just defeated Cassie. I'm going to do the same thing to Massie. And this guy I'm supporting, this Navy SEAL, is an American war hero who only ran because he thought Massie was so disloyal and disrespectful to your president. Me, all uppercase. And so, again, it is all about personal loyalty to Trump. As a matter of fact, Massie said, whenever he contacts me from time to time, and this is what he had to say about Donald Trump's phone calls.
And whenever I call him, I got to schedule a minute for the first thing he tells me every time I call him. Massie, you're a sharp cookie. You went to MIT. My professor was, my uncle was Professor John G. Trump. He was at MIT, 41 years. It's a record. And, I went to Wharton, which is basically the hardest school in the world to get into. So, I've got even better genetics than you. He's literally told me this 3 times. I don't know if it's a script on his phone he reads. But here's the thing. Just like, I asked, do any of you agree with your spouse more than 90% of the time? If you've been married any period of time, if you...
That's right. Yeah, there are real substantive issues. It's not just about personal loyalty, but it is about that for Trump. Because you had Boebert, who has endorsed and campaigned for Massie, fellow Republican, right? You want to talk about Ronald Reagan, Ed Gowrie? Well, what did Ronald Reagan say? He said, the 11th commandment is you don't trash other Republicans. That is what Trump does. That's what Ed does. That's what they're all about. So he's threatened to pull his endorsement from Boebert, calling her weak-minded because she supports Thomas Massie. I think she's got a bit of a backbone that's starting to show there, so we got to get rid of her now. So now he attacks previous supporters like Boebert. Of course, he's already done that with Massie, with Marjorie Taylor Greene, and threatened to back a primary challenger after she campaigned for Thomas Massie. That is the petty vindictiveness of this New York City Democrat who has taken over the Republican Party. He's no more Republican than the Israeli government is American. Boebert is campaigning for the worst Republican congressman in the history of our country, he said. And again, that is his phrase, the worst Republican congressman in the history of our country. We've had some pretty bad ones, but I think Thomas Massie is a nearly perfect score from the New American that rates people based on their freedom and economic votes that are there. Trump would be down at the bottom of the list, by the way. I don't know if they ranked him or not. Massie supports the Constitution. He's a conservative libertarian. Trump is a New York City Democrat, and everything is about his own ego. You got ego politics and egonomics. That's what he majors in. He did not go to MIT, by the way. So again, he's coming after Boebert, says she is parading around with Thomas Massie, and it'd be an honor to give an endorsement to somebody else. Meanwhile, people in America are starting to wake up to what this guy is about. As a matter of fact, there was a C-SPAN caller, and C-SPAN will do these things. All right, we're going to take calls from people on this particular issue, and they have a Republican line and a Democrat line. Well, this is a call from a Republican who said this about Trump.
Hard for me to say this, but I think if I can open up about it in public, that it might help others. I wanted to believe Trump was the real deal for a long time, even though I had doubts because I knew enough about his business history to think otherwise. But now I regret my support for him, and I should have known better. He's making it plain as day. He's a con man, a liar, doesn't keep his promises. He's in office all for himself, and he doesn't even try to hide his corruption anymore. So unless you get all your information from what I call the right-wing propaganda for profit, disinformation, media, industrial complex, he's the worst president we've ever had, and he's the most corrupt president we've ever had. I know it's hard. It took me a while to be able
I absolutely agree.
Very difficult when you commit yourself to believing in somebody. But
Thomas, if you don't mind me interjecting, did you vote for Trump all three times in 2016, 2020, 2024?
I'm sorry, I missed that. Say that again, please.
Did you vote for President Trump all three times that he's run?
Yes. I wanted to vote. I considered a third party, and I considered even a Democrat, but I did, in the end, vote for him.
And what do you feel? That's really interesting. What do you feel, or what was the straw that broke the camel's back this time around? Was it the war? Is it something
I don't think
else?
it's one thing. It's been a cumulative process. And it's gotten so blatant now, and he's just literally the things he's going to lower prices on day one. He was going to do this on day one. Only he could fix all this stuff. And now I understand how somebody like Adolf Hitler was able to brainwash millions of people. I never thought I'd see that again in my lifetime, but it's happened, right? I thought we got past that, but we don't learn from history. But
no, we don't.
I just hope the best we got to slow him down, make him accountable any way we can. Right now, the only weapon is to vote for as many Democrats, whether you like them or not, to just get some balance back.
Or he could vote for Thomas Massie.
Balance, right? We just Congress is doing nothing to stop him. He has more power. He wants to be a king, and we're letting him get away with it. We fought a revolutionary war against England because we didn't want to be ruled by an arbitrary king like Trump wants to be.
Again, you can vote for the lesser of two evils, but you're still voting for evil. But if you vote for Thomas Massie, you don't have to vote for evil. You can vote for the Constitution, and you can vote for our economic good.
So what you're saying of him being a one-man fourth turning, it's the perfect president to put in place. He's got this cultish following of primarily nominally right-wing people that, traditionally would be considered right-wing. They aren't in terms of policy because they're just following him blindly. But it's people now thinking that they'll get something better if they vote Democrat. It's what that previous comment that we had up, regardless of who you vote for, you get Bibi. The Democrats are just as much in the Israelis' pockets.
Yeah, the majority of them are. That's right. Again, as this guy said, he's in office only for himself. He doesn't even try to hide his corruption anymore. He doesn't even try to hide the fact that he took us into war for Israel. The whole idea that this was an imminent threat, he's discredited. Pete Hegseth is discredited multiple times. Now he's just telling you. And this is the way the guy is. He calls Thomas Massie the worst congressman ever. This guy, Trump, is the worst president ever, I believe. And again, worst president of my lifetime, hands down, without a doubt. U.S. and Israel are preparing to renew attacks on Iran next week. Perhaps he's going to get that PR event that he wants. And it doesn't matter how many people he kills, right? He doesn't care how he hurts Americans. He doesn't care how he hurts the economy of America or the world. He doesn't care how many people he kills. He's got a PR thing to run, and that's all he cares about. Again, two unnamed Middle East officials told the New York Times on Friday, preparations for new strikes by Israel and the U.S. have greatly accelerated over the past few days. The conflict could resume as early as next week, or it might happen Wednesday after the election. Who knows? Especially if Massie wins, he's going to want to distract attention away from that. The options could include a more aggressive bombing run. Another option would be staging a raid to seize Tehran's enrichment uranium stockpile. Again, a PR raid that he would do for that. So this is the liar and thief who is now masquerading as commander-in-chief. Trump's grip, however, on GOP lawmakers is showing signs of slipping amid the election this year. They may, some of them, see the handwriting on the wall and the albatross around their neck. They're breaking from Trump, and it's become more prominent. Some House GOP leaders, for example, are moving forward with an amended bipartisan version of a Senate-passed housing bill this week. Housing? Who cares about that? Right? He's only interested in Israeli settlements. He doesn't care about the fact that more than 60% of Americans can't afford to buy a home. As a matter of fact, there's a chart on one article on Zero Hedge that showed it state by state, and I didn't see any state where fewer than 60% of the people were locked out of buying a house. So more than 60% of the people in every state, even the best ones, were locked out of being able to buy a house. And in the worst states, like the Democrat ones, 80%. Because just like Trump, the Democrats don't care if you have the American dream. They want to shut it down. Moderates have also balked at the administration's proposal to provide $1 billion in security funding for the new White House ballroom. Oh, yeah, that's our priority, isn't it? I tell you, Trump has reached Marie Antoinette levels of arrogance and detachment as an elitist. And so this election tomorrow in Kentucky is a crucial test of Trump's political strength. Will any opposition gain critical mass? I guess we could say critical massy. And it will go nuclear, folks, if he is able to defeat Trump. And that's exactly why Trump and his Zionist supporters are going in unashamedly and to such depth on this. And of course, this article from The Guardian, I thought was very interesting. They pretty much covered the disagreements between Thomas Massie and Trump, but the elephant in the room, the Zionists and the Zionist billionaires and the Jewish Republican Coalition, all the rest of it, they completely ignored that at The Guardian. What does that tell you about The Guardian? How could you avoid that elephant in the room unless that elephant owned you? So again, he voted against Trump's sprawling tax and spending cut bills. He co-authored legislation to compel the release of the Epstein files. He sought to revoke tariffs on Canada. He joined Democrats in opposing Trump's decisions to attack Venezuela and Iran without congressional approval. He said bombing a country on the other side of the globe won't make the Epstein files go away. And so, again, that is good, but it is not the central issue that is funding the opposition for him. So they came up at the last minute, we saw last week, with a smear on him, which Reason did a great job of debunking and pointing out what a hack attack that was on him. But it was pretty obvious for anybody who follows politics. We've seen this game played over and over and over again. One of the most obvious ones actually was against John McCain, who I loathe in terms of the fact that he was always pushing for war. But when he was running for president, just before, immediately before the South Carolina primary, they did a smear campaign saying that he had an illegitimate black daughter or something. I think it was somebody that they had adopted. And again, it was demonstrably false. But they put it out right before the election, which is what they did with Massey as well. Whenever you see something like that has been around for a while and they throw that out at the last minute, you know that this is a political hack attack. Nevertheless, what you saw in response was that Massey's Polymarket people were placing bets as to whether or not he would win. And it was very high that he would win, even though the other polls, the traditional polls, show that it is a very tight race. He used to have a 5-point lead over Ed Gallrein, in spite of the fact that they had, millions, tens of millions of dollars given to them. But then when this lie hit, and again, saw the same thing done to Frank Nicely, one of the most childish attacks I've ever seen. Massive amounts of money out of state to pay for flyers showing pictures of Frank Nicely with Biden, and it wasn't even a good Photoshop job. Of course, it was before you had the AI graphics capability. And it's very childish what the accusations they were making against him. Frank Nicely was like Thomas Massey, a libertarian conservative. He was about free markets and freedom. As a matter of fact, Frank Nicely, during all the COVID stuff, he put through and got it passed a bill to allow people to buy ivermectin over the counter without a prescription. That's the kind of guy he was. And so the out-of-state interests, which may have been pharmaceutical, who knows, he offended enough people. As a matter of fact, he put in a bill to stop out-of-state money. The other Republicans didn't support him on that because they won it. And so the out-of-state money organized against Frank Nicely. And the guy that they put in, just like Ed Gallrein, had absolutely no issues that he talked about on his website. And he certainly didn't want to talk about his background. And we have seen that with Ed Gallrein. He has padded his resume in terms of his military service as well. But again, with Massey, you can support a principled opposition to Trump, not settle for an evil, pro-LGBT, totalitarian taxation and control state by the Democrats. That's the bottom line takeaway from all this stuff. Trump carried his district, Massey's district, with 2/3 of the vote in 2024. Massey, however, has won the past 3 primaries with 3/4 of the vote. So he has stronger support than Trump in his own district. For many loyal Republicans, the men's feud has created an astonishingly personal choice. Well, the feud is all coming from Trump's side. Just look at how he's turned on MTG, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and on Boebert, and anybody. And why? Because of the Epstein thing. You want to talk about a low life. That is the ultimate projection from a low-life billionaire like Trump, who hung around with the Epstein crowd. You can't get any lower life than that. So these are some of the crazy quotes that you see from people as The Guardian was going around. One guy who voted for Trump 3 times says, well, I've coached football, and if every coach agrees with each other, then I think there's something wrong. That's right. There is something wrong in the Republican Party. Something is rotten there. There has to be somebody that disagrees with something. However, they talked to some other people. A guy who's 57, he said, Massey is a rhino. He votes against Trump far too frequently because Trump is now the Republican Party, you understand, right? And that is the amazing thing. When you look at a rhino is somebody who espouses Republican principles and then votes against them when they get into office. Doesn't that describe Trump to a T? I guess you could say he's a Tino. He's Trump in name only, right? Anyway, the guy says, Massey should have voted with the president. Yeah. How dare you not vote with the president 100%? How dare you stand with the Constitution against Trump? If he wants to stand on principle, more power to him, because he's going to find out that he loses his seat. That's what the Republican Party has become. That's what MAGA has become. You stand on principle and we'll throw you out. You stand with Trump because he has no principles. Again, he said, everything that's proposed to him, he votes against. Well, those are things that are proposed by Trump. He says there's got to be a reason, and he doesn't want to share those reasons. Well, no, actually, Thomas Massey does share the reasons, It is Trump who doesn't want to debate. It is Trump's hand-picked puppet, Ed Galrein, who is afraid to debate. He's the one who's afraid to give any reasons for what he wants. And again, the Republican Party is primed for extinction, folks, and rightfully so. I think it's kind of interesting, and they talk about that in this article, and I've seen video clips of it. Thomas Massey built his house, and it's a big house. Timber frame home, 4,400 square feet on a 1,000-acre farm. And he was showing off the some of his masonry work that he did with the ovens and fireplaces and stuff. And I was very impressed with what he did. I couldn't do that, quite frankly. I don't know how to build a timber frame home even in my best days, to be able to get up there with that stuff at that elevation. But it is interesting. And he did it by hand, which is better than Jefferson. Jefferson used slave labor to get this stuff done. He's off the grid. He's got a repurposed wrecked Tesla Model S battery that he uses, a rainwater collection system. He's a farmer. He has spoken out for our freedom to be able to grow our own food and to support farmers who grow their own food locally and not have to go to USDA slaughterhouses and that type of thing. Trump is so divorced from the, not just his three wives. Well, he still has Melania, but he is essentially a virtual divorce with that, I think. But he is so divorced, not just from his wives, but from reality in terms of how the rest of us live. He doesn't care about that at all. And so again, he has been in dogged pursuit of the Epstein files, says The Guardian. And I guess the question is, why isn't MAGA on board with that? Why do they embrace the depravity and the evil of Donald Trump? And that especially includes his so-called pastors and spiritual advisors, who have absolutely no problem with that. Trump doesn't think, or never heard the word repentance. He doesn't think he ever has anything he needs to ask forgiveness for, right? Because he thinks he can just cover it all up. Well, you're not going to cover it up when you stand before the Lord Jesus Christ. That's the bottom line. So again, he's you've got the Chamber of Commerce is running really hard against Massey because they're completely sold out. As the basis of this fake attack against him. By the way, he plunged in the poly market stuff, but within a day or two, he had gotten it back plus some, because people saw what a dirty trick this was from the Zionists and from Ed Galrein. So he voted with Trump's pledged political agenda of no new wars, rather than the big government monstrosity the second term has become, said Reason Magazine. But I think the interesting thing is this fake story. Thomas Massey's wife of 35 years died in June of 2024. He started dating this woman who's now made these accusations. He started dating her. The relationship lasted from September 2024 until early 2025. He started doing that. Unlike Trump, he waited until his wife had died. He didn't cheat on her. The relationship lasted for a short period of time. It's mostly long distance, since she lived in Florida. And so he wanted to get her to Washington, D.C. He arranged for her to apply for a job in the office of Representative Victoria Spartz from Indiana. He also gave her between $5,000 and $10,000 to help her with moving costs and to pay other bills. She said that her estranged husband had given her no child support and no alimony, so he was trying to help her out. After they broke up in January 2025, she gave him back some of the money, as much as $5,000. So she had obtained a temporary 90-day position in Spartz's office. When the time expired, her contract was not renewed. She characterizes the matter differently, saying that she was fired, and so she filed a wrongful termination lawsuit, which the Office of Congressional Workplace Rights offered her a settlement that she refused, since the money came with a non-disclosure agreement, which is standard practice for congressional employee disputes. She now claims that Massey's gift to her was intended to persuade her to drop the lawsuit. See, she hasn't even made any claims about sexual assault or rape, like all the long line of women complaining about Donald Trump. Didn't make any claims about that. But as Reason points out, this makes absolutely no logical sense since he gave her the money before she even moved to Washington. So he didn't give her the money to get her to be quiet about the lawsuit. When reached for comment, she directed me to a spokesperson, says the author at Reason. This spokesperson would not respond to any questions. Again, just like Galrain, he will not debate, he will not answer questions, and she won't either.
This
But I think
$5,000 is just in case you ever get fired and want to sue. Don't do that.
I know, it's so ridiculous. And here's the most interesting thing that Thomas Massie pointed out. He said, they contrived a false deposition that was released just 1 week before my election, and this was conducted by the guy who lost to me in 2012. And he did the deposition in the law office of McMurtry, who lost to me in 2020. And it was then posted immediately by Dieters, who lost to me in 2024. So the three guys that he defeated in 2020, 2024, and in 2012 all worked together to put out this false deposition.
The Legion of Doom is here.
That's right. And then the real Legion of Doom is the people like Laura Doomer, I guess we should call her. She is the official attack dog for Donald Trump, and Will Chamberlain, a pro-Israel national conservative, who's also involved. And Reason points out it's worth mentioning that 3 pro-Israeli billionaires are also involved in this. Of course, he mentions it, but of course, The Guardian doesn't see anything at all in any of that. Well, when you look at Pete Hegseth, the Babylon BB, which is taken over from the Babylon B, and is actually funny. They showed Pete Hegseth. They had a clip of Pete Hegseth parachuting into an event because they said, well, as soon as Ed Galrain started talking about reviving the draft, Pete Hegseth parachutes in to support him. And Hegseth is going to be there today to speak in favor of Ed Galrain and against Thomas Massie, because Thomas Massie is against the criminal, illegal, unconstitutional, immoral wars of War Pete. And if you want to know just how bad these things are, as a matter of fact, a French senator laid it out for us.
After assembling the most powerful army in the world, failing to win a war against a middle power, causing oil and gas prices to skyrocket, and delivering incoherent speeches, the golfer from Mar-a-Lago shamelessly admits to being stunned by the Iranian response, which was entirely predictable, and now calls for help from his allies whom he was insulting just yesterday. And they reply to him, "You didn't consult anyone, you have no plan, and we have no reason to follow you blindly into the fog." Trump, the only elephant in the world who walks around with his own china shop, now has no choice but between 2 equally bad options: to withdraw shamefully, pretending, without convincing anyone, that he has achieved his objectives, or to trigger an escalation with results that have been known in advance since Vietnam, Iraq, or Afghanistan. A quagmire, and in the end, a disgraceful departure, leaving the field open at the time to the communists, to Daesh, or to the Taliban.
Well, that's a pretty accurate summary. And I liked what he said. The only elephant to carry around his own china shop with him. Trump doubles down after dismissing affordability concerns amid the Iran war. Again, he said last week, I don't think about Americans' financial situations. I don't think about anybody except one thing. And that is, what does Bibi want? And of course, he wants things. He's always got his nuclear fantasies that are out there. Well, we know what Ed Galrain wants. He wants war for Israel.
I went recently to one of the radio interviews I'm fond of doing to talk to the American people about what's going on, things that would be important to them.
But he doesn't want to debate
with 13 pages of the unclassified. If I brought the classified attack, it'd be 1,013 pages. I can't talk about it. They're one of the horsemen.
I'd have to kill you. Well, you know, the guy that you're following could unclassify it. Americans should know this stuff. But of course, he also wants a draft for all of us.
In 1973, we moved away from conscription selective service and went to the all-volunteer force.
Right.
And so that's been the most challenging few years since that transition, and that is a significant issue for national security. And now back to the question about, well, you know, selective service and, you know, the attitudes about it. I would offer there is a cultural issue, and that it does appear we have a corrosion of our culture and the commitment to what our nation stands for. If you figure, we got to start selective service, we got to get them through all the in-processing, boot camp, trainings, you're talking months downstream.
That's what our nation stands
Do we
for,
really
the
have
draft.
that time anymore?
No.
Is that a deeply flawed concept?
Yeah.
And so what would really happen if we had to go from what I call a cold start of a pending, world war? How fast and what would really happen if we had to re-implement selective service, i.e. the draft, train, equip, and prepare to deploy those forces? I'm not sure we have that kind of time anymore.
Right.
Because of speed and lethality. We want to stay in deterrence. I'm not so sure that we're on as high ground in deterrence
You're on
as
aggression.
we could be with, sort of the way things are unfolding relative to our ability to field combat power.
Yeah.
And so the selective service, the draft.
Folks, he's nothing but a mercenary, a hired killer. I don't care if he is Navy SEAL. He'll kill whoever they tell him to kill. He will lie whatever they tell him to say. And if you don't know how a draft is going to work out, you might want to take a look at Ukraine. Here's a country that's been invaded, but they distrust their leadership so much they refuse to fight for it. And this is what it looks like in Ukraine. You got these press gangs, literal press gangs, grabbing people on the street, and the number of these gangs, these press gangs, has gone up by 40%. They're attacking people on the street, dragging them into cars, sometimes driving off with the doors open and the guy's feet kicking out the side. You just had a massive car accident that was caused by one guy trying to escape from him. And nothing is beyond these crooks that are literally kidnapping people. If you have a just cause, and if you make the cause known to people and you declare the reasons and the purposes for the war, you don't have to do this. They didn't have to send masked men to kidnap people to fight in World War II. So why are they doing that here? Again, this is a country that's been attacked, but look at the way they're grabbing these people. Here's one guy, they're trying to get him. And watch what he does with his car. He gets in his car, he slams in the car behind him, slams in the car in front of him, he slams in the car behind him again, is trying to move, get out of the way, and then he drives off. And now he gets a cop car chasing him with that, right? But folks, he's in a fight for his life. As a matter of fact, one of these videos, this guy coming after him, he says, "You're going to be slaughtered soon." They're just looking for cannon fodder to feed to the autonomous drones that are out there. And that's exactly what Ed Galrain is looking for. Ed, if you want people to fight in your wars, you better make a case for why we should be fighting the war. Go ahead, Lance.
Yeah, and he's saying we need to get back to the principles that America stands for, like the draft that we had in Vietnam back when America was great, and we just went to war with Vietnam for no reason.
As a matter of fact, Colonel McGregor has made the case that, if you have people who are going to have skin in the game because they get drafted, they're going to push to make sure that this is a war that is justified, or they're going to push, as people did during Vietnam, to stop an unjustified war. In a recent interview, a Ukrainian MP recounted the case of a father of 5 who, because he was a father of 5, was exempt from military service. He said he was literally murdered, quote unquote, inside a draft center before the incident was allegedly covered up. According to the lawmaker, the case was far from unique. In other words, they're doing this all the time. They're kidnapping people. These are press gangs. This is what an empire like the British Empire did in terms of capturing people and pressing them into service. This is a hallmark of tyranny. It's what this country was founded to fight against. And it was people like Ed Galrain that the founders of this country did fight against. Well, so much for his ego politics. I want to talk about his corruption as well when we come back. And we have some comments here. Owen61, thank you for the tip. He says, thank you to me. Well, thank you very much. And I'm Marty. Thank you very much. And he asked, is this a new logo? No, that's not a new logo. That was something that Travis put in. He's gone to Texas, but he will be joining us on the program. He's going to set things up so he can also join in on the program. Lance is running the board today, and Travis put that together as just a little thing down in the corner. So he wanted to make something that was small. But thank you so much for the support. Marty's been a great supporter. DG8 says, Trump hijacked the Tea Party movement, independent on D.C. Now we are left with a cult of government worshipers. And quite frankly, that was the problem I had with the Tea Party as well. Taxed enough already. Okay, I agree. However, what programs do you want to cut? silence. No idea, no principles involved with the Tea Party except we're taxed enough already. It reminded me of that black guy in New York City who constantly, I can't remember his name, he constantly runs for mayor, and he says, the rent's too high. This is, well, what do we do about the rent? You know, what is the solution to that? Is it rent control, or is it getting rid of some of the government regulations that drive the price of rent up? Those are the things that need to be talked about. But of course, they don't do debates anymore. There's absolutely no reason to do debates, especially when you can do gerrymandering and you can pick the voters. You don't have to worry about any of that kind of stuff. Well, Jason Barker, Knights of the Storm, good to see you, Jason. He said, how is ivermectin over the counter such a debate when they sell Plan B, abortion pills, via the mail so that no doctor has a consultation? Good point, Jason. Also, I saw yesterday a commercial for hormone pills for women that can be sent to your house. That's right. No longer ask your doctor. You just ask your postman.
Are these hormone pills really for women, though?
Who knows? CJ Prumble says, guess who? Donald Trump Jr. has joined the advisory board of Polymarket, the largest prediction market, and his venture capital firm, 1789 Capital, has made a significant investment in the company. Yeah, a lot of people pointed that out when Massey tanked on Polymarket. Of course, after the truth started coming out, and of course it was suspect from the very beginning, she didn't even accuse him of talking to her bad at all. I mean, it's like, it's not like, well, he texted me, some lewd pictures like Eric Swalwell, or he said this or that, or he physically attacked me as legions of women have pointed out about Donald Trump. But of course, I guess Thomas Massey isn't a celebrity, so women wouldn't let him do that kind of stuff to them. But a lot of women didn't let Donald Trump do that kind of stuff either, but that didn't stop him. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
You're listening to The David Knight Show.
Hear news now at apsradionews.com or get the APS Radio app and never miss another story.
Well, welcome back. We're running out of time here. I'm way behind on things. Trump touted Palantir on Truth Social after he bought the company's stock. And this is just one, but it is a big one that he has done. Again, as the guy was talking about this, he said, the most corrupt president we've ever had. It's right in your face. And of course, the worst president we've ever had. Not only is there a massive amount of corruption, looking like a banana republic, but we're a banana republic that can't afford to buy bananas because of the Republicans. Trump scooped up shares of artificial intelligence software maker Palantir weeks before he famously lauded the stock. But of course, it's insider trading on steroids because he knows that he's going to award contracts to these people as well. Records show thousands of transactions during the first quarter, totaling hundreds of millions of dollars, with each trade listed as a price range. During the first 3 months of this year, Trump purchased between $247,000 and $630,000 worth of stock in the now Miami-based AI company Palantir. In March alone, he made at least 7 purchases of Palantir, totaling as much as $530,000 in the month of March. But that's nothing compared to the massive grift that he's setting up with this nearly $2 billion lawsuit settlement that he's going to basically sue himself and then say, and I can pay myself. So what he does, he files a lawsuit against the U.S. government, and then as the liar and thief, not a commander-in-chief, he tells his Justice Department to give up on the lawsuit and settle with me. And they do. And so Trump has praised Palantir on Truth Social as the shares suffered the worst week in over a year. But of course, the big thing is the insider trading. He knows that he is setting them up with new contracts. And he's investing in that. Trump and his family, the Trump Organization, don't play a role in the selecting, directing, or approving of specific investments, they said. Well, if you believe that, I've got a bridge in Brooklyn I can talk to you about. So the president's assets are in a trust that is managed by his children. It is not a blind trust, as other presidents have done. It is a very different arrangement. Palantir sponsored Trump's military parade held in June for the Army's 250th anniversary. Other tech companies also reportedly sponsored the event, but Palantir wasn't the president's only big tech trades. In February, he bought between $1 million and $5 million worth of NVIDIA. About a week later, the company expanded its AI deal with Meta Platforms. Again, he's required to file these reports. He's been filing them late and paying the $200 fee. That's it. We had the Stock Act. If you remember that a few years ago? People called that the Pelosi Act because there was a 60 Minutes report exposing all of her massive insider trading. And so she was kind of had her hands tied, and they pushed that thing through and then waited a few months and then eviscerated it. So there's no prohibition, there's no penalty, there's no crime in doing insider trading from people in the executive branch or the legislative branch who they know who the contracts are going to go to. But they can do insider trading, which is absolutely criminal. Remember all the stuff that Martha Stewart went through. She was never convicted of insider trading. They caught her in some kind of a minor perjury trap and sent her to jail for that. Nancy Pelosi and the rest of these people do insider trading all the time, and there's no prohibition against it. And so in these reports, he only puts it somewhere between $1 and $5 million. I'm not going to tell you exactly how much. Records show the president brought upwards of $1 million worth of Amazon, Apple, and Broadcom as well. But the key thing is that he made 3,700 trades in just one quarter. And the amount of trading that Trump is doing on the stock market is going up exponentially. If you look at the graph, it goes like this, straight up. The hockey stick, the virtual hockey stick that Al Gore liked to talk about. More than 3,700 trades in the first quarter, a flurry of trades totaling tens of millions of dollars and involving major companies that have dealings with his administration. That is the corruption that we're seeing here. So again, the Office of Government Ethics, what a joke, the OGE, said the volume of trading, which is more than 40 per day over a 3-month period. I mean, between buying and selling stocks and tweeting on the internet, has he got time to do anything else? Oh, that's right, he doesn't do anything else, does he? It's pretty stupid what is happening in the Trump administration and very corrupt. This is an insane amount of trades, said a guy who's a CEO of a capital management company, Tuttle. It looks, again, that's harkens back to Brazil, right? Is it Tuttle or Buttle? I don't know. Anyway, he said it looks more like something done by a hedge fund with a massive algorithmic trades. He first buys and then he shorts securities. Then it looks like a personal account. In the first quarter, the president bought at least $1 million each in companies like NVIDIA, Oracle, Microsoft, Boeing, Costco, according to the documents. Other trades involved eBay, Abbott Labs, Uber, and AT&T, even Dollar Tree. I guess he figures Dollar Tree is a growing business because he's going to be making us all so poor. We'll all have to go to the cheapest stores. But when you look at the trades, they have gone up exponentially over time. And so the disclosure reignites conflict of interest concerns that have shadowed Trump's term in the White House. Unlike his predecessors, Trump did not divest or move his assets into a blind trust with an independent overseer because he knows that his supporters are blind in their trust of him. So why does he need to bother with that? It is managed by his two sons and by people like Jared Kushner, who Kushner is managing billions of dollars in investments for Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE, while simultaneously serving as a quote-unquote volunteer envoy, somebody who was never elected, somebody who would never face the scrutiny of the Senate for a cabinet seat or anything, and yet he and Witkoff are doing all this stuff here. So the White House dismissed questions saying that Trump only acts in the best interest of the American public. Except he just said that he doesn't act in the best interest of the American public. He said, I don't even care what the Americans' financial situation is. I'm going to act in the best interest of Israel, specifically Benjamin Netanyahu. And so he doesn't act in our best interest when it comes to Iran. He certainly doesn't operate in our best interest when it comes to the stock market. Why this massive uptick, though, in the amount of stocks that he's buying? When you look at what he's been doing over the last few years, he had the fourth quarter of last year, he made 380 transactions. That's about 4 a day. Now he's gone up to 10 times that level. He went from 380 transactions over 3 months to 3,700 transactions. He has increased it by a factor of 10. In August, he reported 690 transactions, but that was over a 7-month period. And that was an average of 3 per day. This last quarter, he was doing 40 per day. I'm baffled, said Eric Dighton, president and managing director at the Wealth Alliance. He said, in the 40-plus years of my time on Wall Street, this is an unusual amount of trading by any standards. We'd need to see the actual trades to try to understand why anyone would want to do that much trading. Again, it's the stupidity and the corruption. Which one is dominating here? The founder of 50 Park Investments said the frequency of trading was, quote, tremendous. What I really want to know is, at the end of the day, all those trades, was the account positive or negative? Trump has made a number of policy moves. Again, if he wants to participate in the casino of Wall Street, this is a guy who bankrupted 6 casinos. So maybe he's not making money off of this. He can't make up his mind. Certainly, Trump always chickens out when it comes to some of these major things. Maybe he's always chickening out on the companies that he invests in. I don't know. Should I go long or should I hedge this thing? Can't really tell. 6 of Trump's trades involved Intel Corporation, which his administration is trying to take over the management of. I mean, we're not talking about a bailout. We're talking about actually doing management of it. That's his perspective on this. It's a Chinese way of looking at this. All this raises questions that you'd rather not raise as a president. So people are asking, why is he buying NVIDIA and other companies now? When you're the president and you know everything, so any stock that you buy, there's a huge question about this. What does he know, I think? Well, I think he knows that he's going to be adding a lot of contracts to Palantir. I think he knows that he is clearing the decks to let AI do anything that it wants. And I think he knows that he's on path to create massive, massive inflation. Now, that would be an argument for investing, let's say, in the stock market. Or, of course, he's not going to invest in something that is as sound as gold, even though he has an obsession with gold. But I think he's looking at the inflation that is coming. I think that's why he's trying to get into the Wall Street casino. But again, this is a guy who does not know even how to run casinos. And the worst thing that he's doing, we're not even talking about that yet. We'll pick up on that tomorrow. And that's his $2 billion fund that he's just going to sign a check to himself. He's boasted about that. Thank you for joining us. The common man. They created Common Core to dumb down our children. They created Common Pass to track and control us. Their Commons Project to make sure the commoners own nothing. And the communist future. They see the common man as simple, unsophisticated, ordinary. But each of us has worth and dignity, created in the image of God. That is what we have in common. That is what they want to take away. Their most powerful weapons are isolation, deception, intimidation. They desire to know everything about us while they hide everything from us. It's time to turn that around and expose what they want to hide. Please share the information and links you'll find at thedavidknightshow.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. If you can't support us financially, please keep us in your prayers. TheDavidKnightShow.com.